You can listen to The Professional Left on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or on our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for July 13th, 2018. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield of Resistance, where no one is under subpoena, going to jail, or trashing America's allies. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Who's going to make out like a fat rat this week?
I heard that there is somebody who's going to make out.
Our sponsors, our new sponsors. Hello Fascist, the at-home meal kit for Republicans.
Oh, yeah, they're all going to have to dine in for a long time. They're not really our sponsors, by the way.
No, but they are having a special offer this week only. Hello Fascist is featuring a special That'll Show 'em sushi. You can own the libs with an $80 order of traditional, contemporary, or fusion sushi, specifically designed to be thrown dramatically away to show the left that you mean business. Hello Fascist, because those people are definitely peeing in your food.
Yeah, and you can own the libs by throwing away your $80 restaurant meal.
Yes, you can. So you should order it from our sponsor, Hello Fascist. But the big winner this week was really the Rube Tube.
I have to say, the Rube Tube had a lot of video washing to do this week.
Their website almost crashed. They cut us a huge, we're an early adopter, so they cut us a huge check, imaginary check, just so we're all clear. All of our sponsors are imaginary. But if your political party just set fire to its own witch hunt and then drove the entire thing off a cliff, what are you going to do?
Oh, wait a minute. They did that on live TV. That's the problem.
Well, that is the problem. And that's why there's in the Rube Tube world, there's a little bit of past posting going on, which fans of the Sting know are when you hold the results of a race just long enough to get down a bet on a race that's already been won. So at Rube Tube, your worries are over because they will automatically decontextualize the Republican fiasco of the day, whatever it might be, and reassemble it as a heroic saga of MAGA saving America from the international crime bosses at the FBI. This week, just type in the offer code GOMERT to begin enjoying soothing 100% fact-filtered news today. The Rube Tube, it's Fox News without Shep Smith.
Let me ask you something, Driftglass.
Yes, Blue Gal.
That was sort of the anomaly of the week, was Gomert and Fox News's reaction to Gomert. And let's just provide the background for future generations. This was Strazek's testimony, on-air testimony.
I'm going to call him Strzok from now on.
Strzok. Okay. Mm-hmm. Strzok's testimony. And yes, the Republicans tried to box in his bias that somehow FBI agents are only supposed to investigate people they like. Right. And so which kind of makes it difficult. But and also that the fact that actually Strzok kept the investigation of the Trump campaign secret until well after the election means he's biased against Trump somehow.
Well, that's the problem, because they have a set of talking points. Mm-hmm. Which make absolutely no sense individually, and taken collectively just sort of annihilate each other. Mm-hmm. There's this massive FBI conspiracy to derail the Trump campaign and cost him the election that they initiated by hiding incriminating evidence about Donald Trump being a Russian agent and trashing Hillary Clinton.
And rushing Hillary to get Hillary Clinton's information out right before the election, right, in an October surprise, yes.
And that's one bumper sticker. The other bumper sticker, there's 20 of them. The having negative opinions about Donald Trump means you should recuse yourself from anything to do with that, especially investigations, because you can't be trusted. And then, of course, Democrats just read from the place where Republicans dare not go. That's the past.
Yes.
And all these quotes from Paul Ryan, major Republicans right up and down the aisle going, Donald Trump can't be trusted. Donald Trump's a disaster. Donald Trump should step aside. Ted Cruz, Donald Trump's a dirty, dirty old man and should keep his filthy hands off my life. On and on. All these horrendous, fuck you, Donald Trump is going to be a disaster. Donald Trump's a criminal. He's a liar. He's a racist scumbag, from prominent Republicans, most of whom now sit in Congress.
Well, and the thing that Strzok and all of these Republicans have in common is these are white, privileged men who thought Hillary was going to win, and then they could run a lawnmower over her.
That's right.
They could run a lawnmower over her before the election, after the election. It was open season on Hillary Clinton, no matter what.
She's their Jesus.
Right.
She's the one who will redeem all their sins, and it doesn't matter that we nail
her to the cross every single day. Yep.
Right, because she'll love us anyway. She'll redeem us anyway. So we can go right on being monstrously evil assholes, and she'll win anyway, and that'll give us a free 4 to 8 year run at just trashing her every fucking day. Right. But instead, they elected a fascist. They elected the man who is the id, the true beating heart of the Republican Party, and always has been for as long as I've been alive. But
both Laura Ingraham,
yes,
and Brit Hume, both of them came out against Gohmert, against everything Gohmert was saying, and saying Strzok was not a sympathetic character until Gohmert spoke, and now he's sympathetic.
Well, Gohmert's the easy target. I mean, Gohmert's the one you can dunk on and say, well, Gohmert, but I want to be fair to both sides here, Blue Gal.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
On one side, Louis Gohmert is clearly insane. On the other side, all Democrats and liberals are traitors who are trying to destroy Donald Trump.
So that's the way you get. Well, I wondered if it had anything to do with the fact that Gohmert stepped over the line in talking about Strzok's extramarital affair and lying to his wife, when if you're going to go down that road, you're going to find out that there's documentation that Donald Trump cheated on all 3 of his wives. And if you look at Republican members of that committee, there's a whole series of, extramarital affair, divorce, extramarital affair, divorce, and no one wants to open any of those closets. So the best thing to do is smack Louis Gohmert for even bringing that up as crossing over a line.
Well, and Louis Gohmert's just a lump. I mean, you can hit him all day long, and the good people of Texas are going to reelect him anyway.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They're, inbred gas-sipping hicks, and they love Louis Gohmert. But the point being that all of these individual freestanding bullshit talking points that were just burned to the ground. I mean, they just were leveled.
Yep, simply by remembering what Donald Trump had done and what Republicans had said about it. Right. Yeah.
Using that liberal superpower of memory to just quote them back to themselves. And you can see Trey Gowdy getting smaller and whiter and angrier and slipperier and greasier and uglier by the minute. He was just getting it because this is the, by my count, 3rd or 4th witch hunt that he has just fucked up. He has set it on fire and drove it off a cliff. This is the guy who wants to be a judge. Mm-hmm. This is the guy who's leaving in a couple of months and is presumably wanted to wash his hands of all of this and let everyone forget that he's the problem. He's a plague bearer. So, but that's the problem. They don't have a policy. They don't have a narrative. They have a bunch of freestanding, completely ludicrous conspiracy theories and talking points, none of which make sense, and none of which make sense collectively. And individually, they're just dumb. Collectively, they're insane. And so you need Fox News to extract from the 11 hours of hearing 4 minutes of Republicans shaking their fist at Peter Strzok and 30 seconds of him looking smirky and smartass, and tell the morons who watch Fox News that that's the story. Yep. These righteous, good Republicans who really did stand up for against one of our own, Louis Gohmert, who we think he just stepped over the line. He exercised bad judgment, very much like Peter Strzok did, and show the reprogrammable meatbags who watch Fox News and believe everything they're told on there, that what they didn't see but can be filtered through the Fox News lower intestine and fed directly into their mouths is, in fact, Republicans being righteous and true in defending America against a monstrous, out-of-control FBI. No one who saw that actually live on television could possibly reach that conclusion. And that's why that conclusion will never, ever see the light of day on Fox News. That's why they put Bill Shine in charge of White House messaging. Mm-hmm. Because it's, we've said this before, all House hearings under Republicans exist solely to produce 30-second, 1-minute sound bites for Fox News.
Exactly.
They're not designed to investigate anything. They're not designed to advance anything. They're not designed to find the truth. They're designed to give Darrell Issa or Jim Jordan or Trey Gowdy or the rest of this gallery of horrors a chance to shine in front of the meatbags who think that they're geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all they do. That's literally all. That's how completely depraved the Republican Party is. It is not salvageable. It cannot be salvaged. The Republican Party is complete cultural dead loss, and the only way to fix the country is to burn it down and start over. And
Driftglass, I really think that the Democratic Party needs to split in two.
Yeah, one,
and then you have two sides again, working, fighting each other over how far left we're going to go. And we agree on science. We agree on women's rights, gay rights, non-white rights. We are the anti-white supremacy, anti-white nationalism party. Mm-hmm. We have values. We value each individual, and we value equality. And that's why, on one level, I'm furious and scared and panicky about the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I'm kind of looking forward to this fight, mm-hmm. because we are about to have a fight in America about whether women are people.
Right.
And gays are people, mm-hmm. and non-whites are people. And as you said to me the other day when I brought this up, like, yeah, let's have a show of hands on this right now, So if you don't mind, I'm going to just say a few things about checking in with everybody.
Yeah.
And we got a check for $10 this week that had in the memo line, therapy copay. And I wanted to thank the listener who sent that. It made me chuckle. I don't take myself seriously. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not interested in being anyone's therapist. If you need a therapist, get a therapist. I'm not your therapist. But I do take seriously the responsibility that you and I have, Driftglass, of being honest with our wonderful listeners, mm-hmm. and multiple listeners, about how we feel, mm-hmm. and how we work to feel better, or how we work to feel that we can be effective. And being honest about that starts a conversation, and that's a good thing.
I think that's exactly the speech my mom gave me before she told us she was getting a divorce. So just so you know, folks, we're not getting a divorce. We're happily married. We're
very happy.
We're going to go and go until this is all behind us. And we're at episode, by the way, heads up, everyone. This is episode 449. Next week will be the 450th episode of the Professional.
There's another landmark happening this week too on Monday.
Yes, there is. A certain beautiful woman is having a birthday.
Yeah, I'm turning 55.
She is. She's gorgeous, and she's all mine. So hands off, people.
I want $5.50 for my birthday.
Really?
My daughter asked me, "What do you want for your birthday?" So I want all my listeners that can afford it, to send me $5.50.
If you round it up to 6, no one's gonna look.
Right. Well, $5.50 pays for the PayPal fee and gives me $5.
That's
so
true. That's true.
And then we can pay the car insurance for the 2 teenagers who are on our insurance, right? Going on our insurance this month.
So the floor is yours. Please, I'm stepping out of the way.
Hat tip to Erin Keene, who is an editor at Salon. She tweeted on June 27th, "Every woman I know has been storing anger for years in her body, and it's starting to feel like bees are going to pour out of all of our mouths at the same time." And that spoke to me about Kavanaugh and SCOTUS and Trump and Roe v. Wade and the silencing that's going to happen of any decision that Ruth Bader Ginsburg she's going to become the dissent now. So as I've been writing about this and thinking about it, I'm thinking about 3 tactics that I'm taking. One is to stay in the real and the now. Don't allow what might happen to carry me away. I can't do that. I have to stay in the real and the now and work, mm-hmm. and do what I can do. And that means working toward electing Democrats. That means doing this podcast. It means writing passionately about these issues. Stay in the real and the now. At the same time, prepare to punish states and legislatures that deny women's equality under the law. Yep. And another person, Karen Wilson, tweeted in response, actually, to Erin Keene, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, there will be a civil war fought by angry women, and we will win.
Yes.
That means civil disobedience. That means, and this is the interesting thing, the difference between 1973 and now is most abortions take place by a woman taking 2 pills. Mm-hmm. And I see a whole underground railroad of those pills being made available to women in states where it's not available. That's going to happen. And just the total lack of understanding on the right in this deny choice issue of how women's bodies work is astounding.
I'd like to remind our listeners that when Rush Limbaugh decided he would go off on a dickhead Jeremiah against Sandra Fluke,
right?
He kept talking about how she takes these pills because she wants to have a lot of sex. She takes them every day because she wants to have a lot of sex, and I think I should be able to see that because I'm paying for those pills because he thinks it's Viagra. I mean,
right, which is what he takes, right?
That's how that really, truly, I'm not kidding. That really, truly is how stupid Republican men mostly are about anything to do with women at all.
Well, and they're discouraged from talking about it because it's icky.
Right.
So, and I recall a few years ago, I think it was Wisconsin. I'm pretty sure it was Wisconsin. There was a anti-choice movement to prevent medical schools from teaching the procedure of dilation and curtilage, the D&C that you do with women. And I've had 2 of those as a part of infertility treatment in order to have children. This anti-choice movement wanted to stop medical schools from teaching D&Cs because if you know how to do a D&C, you know how to perform an abortion. So let's just stop doctors from being able to perform life-saving, fertility-saving procedures. This is where you realize, oh, this isn't about babies. This is about power. And so, but getting back to the tactics, stay in the real and the now, prepare to punish states and legislatures that deny women's equality under the law, and focus and stay positive about your argument. That's number 3. Stay positive as far as you can that this is about women's equality under the law. Michelle Wolf this week tossed confetti in the air and said, if you want an abortion, get one. If you don't want an abortion, don't get one. Abortion should be available to everybody. And she's in a majorette's uniform, red, white, and blue, tossing confetti in the air. And this led to Ben Shapiro going to the Twitter and lecturing Michelle Wolf about contraception.
Yes.
Which led me to point out that, oh my gosh, this is the 50-50 rule in politics that you have talked about, Driftglass, for years.
Yep.
Which is half the field. And if as long as we keep moving right and giving half the field to the right, who keeps moving right, all of our politics will move right.
Yeah.
Whereas if we toss confetti in the air about abortions, all of a sudden, here's this conservative that wants to talk about a pro-contraception argument. Mm-hmm. So let's start throwing confetti in the air about abortion. If you want one, get one. If you don't want one, don't get one. And abortion confetti for everybody and having all of a sudden pro-contraception conservatives, that's when you win. Remembering that 1 in 4 women in this country have had an abortion, and that many of those women are Republican, conservative, yada, yada, yada. They are all, this is,
I would guess most. I'm not saying 70%.
You're not kidding. Yeah.
I'm saying most.
The shame associated with out-of-wedlock pregnancy in the right wing is higher.
And who sucks at sex education more than conservative evangelicals?
The Planned Parenthood clinic in Birmingham, Alabama was a busy place. Mm-hmm. And it was a busy place not only for abortion services, but because you went there for birth control before ACA, before, coverage was mandated for birth control. You went there to buy birth control because you didn't want your granny and grandpa to know that you were having sex before marriage.
That's right.
And so you could go there and have a private conversation with someone who was not your pediatrician or your family doctor who goes to church with you and get private, clinical, good advice about sex education and contraception. Mm-hmm. So, and I've mentioned many times, the shopping trip to Atlanta, which is where you go to a private clinic, not a Planned Parenthood, a private clinic, and take cash and go to Atlanta for the weekend and have it taken care of. And that is a thing in Birmingham when I lived there. So punishment for denying equal rights under the law. And if you think that's not effective, if you think that kind of punishment might not be effective, let's ask Papa John Schnatter if public pressure and really public opinion in the Twitter world and the public world isn't effective, because he's now using the N-word in a conference call, which his crime isn't just insensitivity and racism. He really, truly felt his wealth shielded him.
Yes, he did.
From consequences.
Affordable Care Act, especially.
Right. Affordable Care Act. He bitched about that, and I'm going to increase the price of my pizza and not pay. I don't want to give health insurance to my employees. I work hard enough, and bitched and bitched and bitched. Mm-hmm. And then this thing happened where his advertising agency left him. Actually, it wasn't an advertising agency. It was a crisis management media company called the Laundry Room. I think it was.
When your crisis management company quits, they
quit because he said something to the effect of, Colonel Sanders could say N-word. Yeah. Why can't I?
Two reasons. First of all, it was the 50s. Second of all, his chicken tastes good, and your pizza tastes like shit on a shingle. So I've got 9 other reasons, but you go right ahead there, Papa. You tell us all about it. Right.
Well, and now they've removed his face from the napkins today. Yep. He's not CEO. The University of Louisville has taken Papa John's name off of their stadium.
Oops.
There's an NFL team that had every time we score 5 touchdowns, you get a free pizza. That promotion's over. It's a very bad week for Papa John's Pizza. And they may turn it around, or they may just go out of business. We just don't know yet.
You know what I think? If I may add one thing, I think at long last, Todd Aiken has been redeemed.
Todd Aiken.
Todd Aiken was the Republican nominee for the Senate from Missouri, from the great state of Missouri, in 2012. And he had a whole theory about legitimate rape and so on and so forth. But here's what he got right. He just didn't know it. The female body does have ways to shut this whole thing down.
Shut this whole thing down. That's right.
What's about to happen. Women are going to shut this whole thing down and reject.
And probably have to do it at the state level. And, that's a fight that we would rather not have.
Yeah.
This fight against Trump is a fight we'd rather not have. But you know what? You drop us in the middle of a war zone, and we're going to fight back. And it's not going to be pretty. And you're going to lose. I also wanted to read a couple things. One is a quote from Fred Rogers.
Yes.
And we're going to go see this movie this week, I hope, for my birthday.
Yes.
Mr. Rogers. Even though he said, I don't want to take you to a movie where you're going to cry for 45 minutes. I said, that's okay. I sometimes like to cry. That's all right. Mm-hmm. Fred Rogers said, and he was talking about covering national tragedies for children and covering death, the passing of a family member for children, and covering divorce for children. He handled some really serious issues on his show.
He did.
And talked about it in a very honest way for children, but in a way that was healing for them. He was very conscious. He taught children. This article that I'm reading is from the Tyee, Tyee. This article says he talked about it in a way that was gentle, clear, and brave. And here's what he said. Sometimes we need to struggle with a tragedy to understand the gravity of life. Love is what keeps us together and afloat. And so that's where we are right now. And I'm focused on that. That, yes, we've been put in the middle of some really horrible battles, and we feel like we're going to have bees swarming out of our mouth, and our bodies are filled with toxic anger. We are being carried to a place to better understand the gravity of life and what our power is. And then I read an article, and I know sometimes self-help stuff is bullshit and sometimes it isn't. This is an article by a woman named Courtney Carver called For Your Best Health, 8 Things to Consider If You Are Sick and Tired. And she wrote it for MS patients. But when I scrolled through it, because some days I'm sick and tired, and I've had shingles, and I've had shingles, and sometimes it's just too much. Like I said, she wrote this for MS, but when I read it, I was like, oh, this is so helpful to anyone who's feeling like, I can't wait for November. I can't wait till Mueller impeaches everybody, gets this all over with. I can't wait until all of this is over with. And I'm here to tell you, folks, when all this is over with, our battle has just begun, and we've got to keep our armor on for the rest of our lives. I'm sorry about that, but that's where we have been chosen to land on the timeline of history. Mm-hmm. 8 things to consider if you are sick and tired. Number 1, build a team you can trust. Stay with your team. Community, community, community. She also talks about a medical team you can trust, find doctors you like, etc. But in this case, just stay with your community, build a community, and stick with it.
Group care.
Group care. You're not alone. You're not alone. Number 2, remember, you know your body, and I would add, you know your psyche better than anyone else. Don't let anyone else tell you to shake it off, or, oh, you're just having a bad day, or, oh, you just need to go take a break, or, oh, you need it. Nobody knows better than you do what you need. Listen to yourself.
Our favorite catchphrase around our house is, ladies, please.
Would you like me to mansplain or gaslight? Which would you prefer? You get a choice.
Mm-hmm. And I get 6 eye rolls and like, oh, he's being funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you are really outnumbered in this house now.
Oh yeah. By every measure imaginable, I am a terribly oppressed minority within my own
house. Number 3, where you can, reduce stress. That means less worry, less fear, less busyness. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, I have a friend that I work with on a regular basis, and she and I are polar opposites in how we deal with Trump.
Yes.
Her method is to immerse herself in the coverage and make sure she's really paying attention in a very intense way to everything. And that helps her feel in control, which is awesome. I can see it working for her. And so that works for her. It's fantastic. I'm so glad there are people like that in the world. For me, I need, and fortunately, again, I have a team I trust with Driftglass who says, oh no more Twitter for you today. And you're not being patronizing. You are saying that in a caring, loving way that you see that my mental state is at a place of harm.
Yeah, no, it's saturation. It's no.
I'm crying at the laptop. It's like, it's time to pull me away. And you and I have this relationship where you can come to me and say, I really need a hug. And I can come to you and say, I really need a hug, or I need a break, or I can't write this piece. Can you do it? And so we work together on taking care of each other and keeping an eye out. So that's really important. Rest when you need to rest, fuel when you need to fuel, 4 and 5. Rest when you need to rest, fuel when you need to fuel. And I really like the idea of making a list of things that make you feel better. And maybe that's doing postcards for voters.
Sure.
Maybe that's joining a phone bank. Maybe that's going door to door for a candidate.
I'm knocking doors this weekend. I did it last weekend.
Yep.
And,
knitting for cancer patients or new babies or preemie babies or whatever helps me say, oh, I'm making a difference, right? I'm going to do this for half an hour because it makes a difference, and I know it does, and it's something that calms me, and I don't have to have Twitter or the TV on while I'm doing it. I can take a break from that. Number 6, don't try to do it all at once. Hello. Number 7, don't give up. Make the world a better place in one way that you can. And then number 8 is the last one, and it's the best one. Give hope all the time it needs to replace fear. There's only 2 emotions, folks. Fear and love. Fear and hope. That's it. Positive and negative. And the fear can be replaced by hope and love. We're with you. You are not alone. How we get there, we're going to get there in lots of little ways. There's going to be lots of little victories and lots of big victories and setbacks and bad days and days when we feel like the world is going to shit. Hope is stronger than fear. And we will get there together. That's what I have to say.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the spectrum of hopefulness.
Yes, because we have to hear of the angry, bitter, Irish, Scotch-laden professional, right?
Back in 1411. Let me just give my story there. The oppression of my people. No, I'm not going to do that. I could do that all day.
The Irish into this country, Driftglass.
No, the Irish are trash people. But your whole, oh yeah, that's right. My whole, no, the Irish were the last good people let into this country.
Well, that's what I hear. That's what I hear from the right wing. When you scratch the sandals with socks racist who was pointing at and accusing the woman in the Puerto Rico T-shirt of not being an American.
Uh-huh.
Not only was she not an American, she is an American. She was wearing a Puerto Rico shirt because of World Cup, and she had rented the space that he was arguing against her at. And then the cops show up, and they're on his side. Right. And she's just like, what the fuck is wrong with this picture?
Mm-hmm. Everything.
Racism and Irishhood is what's wrong with this picture. Yeah.
Well, you'll be happy to know
yes,
that...
honey. I love you, even though you're Irish.
I love you too. And I live that down. Here are some observations from this week that I consider to be... this is the week of the Republican shit show, okay? This is the Republican... Right. This is the Republican witch hunts. This is the week that Donald Trump just took a bunch of Molotov cocktails and tried to nuke NATO, insult the British. This is the day that they shut London down because the crowds were so large they just clogged every street.
Right.
Everyone hates Donald Trump except Vladimir Putin, and he's going today or tomorrow, off to get his good boy pat on his head and a couple of chicken nuggets from his boss. He's reporting to his boss for his performance review. And 2 authoritarian congenital liars will sit in a room and cut some deals, and there'll be no witnesses. And for 35 to 40% of this country, that's a dream come true.
Right.
And those people have to be deprived of political power at any cost. Those people have to stop having political power in this country. And we've tried reasoning with them. We've tried shaming them. We've tried presenting them with a compendium of information. We've tried presenting them with facts and history, quoting themselves to themselves. We've tried to talk about, where do you think this is going to go? What will happen when 40 million people lose their health insurance again? And they don't have an answer. They just like to see liberals cry. Mm-hmm. So you're not dealing with rational, adult, politically intelligent humans. You're dealing with barbarians who don't think past their next fuck or shit. They don't have any long-term plans for anything other than making liberals cry. That will make them happy. They're miserable, angry, ingrown, bitter assholes. And the only relief they have from their horrible life is to inflict as much damage and misery and suffering and sadism on people who are weaker than them. That's how bullies operate. And so, pardon me for not parsing each individual crime against humanity committed by the Republican Party this week, because there were just too many of them. But what I have noticed, in sort of a larger zoom it out to 40,000 feet level, is that, for example, this week This week, Brett Stevens in the New York Times offered advice to Democrats. Just confirm Kavanaugh. Just do it. Just do it. Just shut up. Because liberals always cry wolf, and Democrats should have learned that, that virtue signaling in Park Slope isn't going to win a Senate election in Nevada, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, I read these people. These are the cream of the crop. And I take a lot of hope in the fact that Brett Stevens and David Brooks and people like that have columns in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And the reason is that they are so soft and inbred and ridiculous that there's literally nothing keeping the right from collapsing under its own weight, under the weight of its duplicity and hypocrisy and depravity, but enormous amounts of cash from their billionaire stake horses and sponsors. And this very thin garment of respectability the media keeps handing them over and over and over again. There are no public debates on any of this between actual lean and hungry liberals and these soft, pouty, bitchy, whiny conservative intellectuals who presume to tell Democrats what they should do and think, because they'd lose.
Yeah.
It is I take some comfort in the fact that these people are so desperately inbred and they're so aware of how weak they are, and the fact that they couldn't take one punch from a liberal. They would collapse completely, and their job would be lost, their cause would be lost, everything would be lost. That they have to hide behind these sinecures in the media where they live. The second big target, and I'm just gonna keep repeating this until everyone gets it. I know our listeners get it. I know my readers get it. I hear it repeated back to me on Twitter. I see other people picking it up and running with it, and it delights me to do so. But I would like to point out that today was the day. This is literally 24 hours after the Republican shit show, when the Republican Party completely humiliated itself. Someone reminded me that this is the tribe that rubs shit in its hair. And that's a phrase I coined, 40 or 50 years ago. It seems like now. Of people who live in a cave only with each other. They only interact with each other, and they amuse themselves by rubbing their own shit in their hair. And they make their hair into big wild designs and giant flotillas of architecture, and they amuse themselves. They think it's glorious, and it smells bad, and it looks ridiculous, and it's horrifying to the average human being. But they don't talk to any actual people. Republicans only talk to each other. So what happens is they go out in public every now and then, and people flee in horror and hide their children from these monsters with shit in their hair who come lumbering down the street talking about Benghazi and emails and Hillary and Peter Strzok and Donald Trump and conspiracies, because what they believe and what they say make absolutely no sense to any rational human being. And what happened this week was the entire tribe that rubs shit in its hair put on a show in the Congress, and they absolutely humiliated themselves. It showed exactly that there's nothing left inside the Republican. There's nothing worth saving. There's not a single decent human being in it. It's just shit all the way down, and they couldn't see it themselves. They're not capable of understanding that we're not reacting because libs are weak, or that we cry easily, or that that it's just both sides. But these people are doing active treasonous harm to our country, and they've been doing it for decades. And rather than and the media would rather do anything, give them anything, cede anything to them, let them torture children, let them launch illegal wars. They would rather do anything than admit the left was right all along.
Yep.
Because that is the end of their business model. That would be the end of American journalism as we know it. Because, and this is something I suggested to Jay Rosen on Twitter, and he liked the idea, is that whether journalists like it or not, or want it or not, or even know it or not, they're not journalists anymore. They're combat correspondents. And they're combat correspondents in enemy territory. And they better get it through their fucking head really fast, because the right is coming for them. And yet, after all of this, I flip open my Twitter today, actually my other Twitter, because this guy blocks me on my regular Twitter. And what do I learn from the chief political analyst at ABC News,
my
Mr.
gosh, Matt Dowd, your favorite.
He tells the whole world, this has 1,100 likes as of this moment. America is in desperate need of humble servant leaders who see compassion and unity as strength. I am done with narcissists, whether they are from the right or the left. Narcissists aren't the answer, nor is responding to hate with hate.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need more bullies. This is a guy who hasn't had nearly enough lunch money beaten out of him when he was in grade school.
All right. We don't need bullying, though. Come on.
What we need are people to sock bullies in the face.
Right. And I want to contrast that to David Hogg. Did you see David Hogg's tweet about career politicians?
I did.
Rookie mistake. The rookie mistake he made of not liking career politicians and wanting both sides to just stop kids from being shot. And everyone on Twitter came to him very gently and said, David, there's only one party that can help you in your cause.
Right.
Because he's young and wants to be bipartisan and idealistic and wants to be bipartisan. And a whole bunch of people had to come over and say, there just isn't that possibility anymore.
And for a high school kid.
And he's a high school kid. So no one shit on him. I mean, not one that I saw shit on him.
No.
It was just, if you want to win, there is only one side that's going to help you.
But for a grown-ass man...
But this is somebody who has reached a professional level.
Well, this is the chief architect of the 2004 Bush re-election campaign.
Right.
Who is also ABC News chief political analyst.
When you reach, this is why we go after elected officials, people in professional, some random person on Twitter that's wrong. I tend to just say, okay, if I can be funny about it, that's one thing. But we really want to hold accountable people who have achieved a professional level where they should be accountable.
Yeah.
Right? It's their job to be accountable.
Yeah. And this is also the week. So these are the targets that I pick because there is no way to in the words of David Brin, science fiction author, in his Uplift trilogy, there's no way to uplift Republicans. There's no way to make them evolve into decent, upright human beings. There just isn't.
Right.
This is who they are. This is who they're going to be. They're going to shop around until they find the crazy-ass news source that will tell them the fairy tales they want to hear, and they're just going to squat in that filth until they die. They're never going to change. They're just – I'm sure a few of them around the edges are going to become independents, and I'm goddamn sure that the minute the Trump administration goes up in flames, a whole bunch of them are suddenly going to break out their Tea Party rags and become independents again and swear they'd never heard of Donald Trump before. I'm absolutely sure of all of that because that's how these people do. They lie. And
they're doing it backwards. They aren't doing it Tea Party way. They're doing it backwards and calling it Trumpism and isolating the moment that Trump came down the escalator until he leaves office as being some sort of bubble anomaly of politics and having nothing to do with Republicans before that and nothing to do with Republicans after that. And so Trumpism, you hear that word over. I've had huge fights on Twitter with people about this because they think I'm being mean to Steve Schmidt, who's on our side.
Right.
I know you've had these same arguments.
I have.
He is not allowed to use the word Trumpism. That is a lifeboat. That is a way of separating his party, this idealized Republican Party that exists out in the ether, that he can then come back to and rebuild, which will then take away my Social Security and Medicare in some grand bargain and cut taxes for billionaires. And that's still, there's still a war on women in that Republican Party. There's still a war on healthcare for all in that Republican Party. No, you don't get to rebuild that party ever again.
Well, and the flip side of that is this week I discovered, much to my shock, that I have mystic weirding powers.
Oh, yes, you do. Isn't it amazing?
It's amazing. I really, and I'm reading now from my own blog, so I'm not really plagiarizing. I'm just reading my own words. I really thought that weirding business was just a clever device by Frank Herbert that he made up to move his
Dune. By the way, everybody take a drink. Dune is science fiction, by the way.
Yeah, this is some of the more this is DNA that Mr. Charlie Pierce and I also share. He's a big fan of he's a big fan of Muad'Dib and Kwisatz Haderach and the entire Dune. Well, a couple of books, the rest of them, yeah. But I really thought that having a voice that literally changed people's brains and forced them to do what you thought they were going to, what you wanted them to do, was just something he made up. Because as a shitty liberal blogger for the last 13 years, up until today, There was absolutely no evidence whatsoever anywhere that I had ever had any influence on anyone's opinion about anything.
I was going to say, you for as long as I've known you, been a nobody in the you and I don't even have blue check marks on Twitter.
No, we don't have blue check marks. We do not exist on some of the finer blogs, blog rolls. We just don't exist. I mean, people quote us, and I coined the most famous phrase of the last 10 years, which the good people at Merriam-Webster still won't acknowledge. But
dumpster fire.
But I'm nobody. I have never influenced anybody. My listeners and readers are delightful people, but they're a small group within a small group within a small group. But this is what I have. This is the platform I have. It's built, you and I built the platforms that we have by ourselves with no support and no help and no infusion of media cash.
I want to thank the listeners who sent us these microphones we're speaking into.
Absolutely. These microphones we are speaking, this Samsung microphone I'm speaking into right now is donated by a listener. Yep. So this is do it yourself.
Yeah.
And we're sitting literally a mile away from a cornfield, 4 miles away from Lincoln's tomb, doing this every week. So this is mom and pop podcasting at its best or worst, or however you rate it. But this is our thing. La Cosa Nostra. This is our thing. And I've been blogging now for 13 and a half years, going on 14 years next year. And I have never had anyone even suggest that anything I've ever said influenced anyone to do anything. But suddenly, I'm getting a lot of cautionary tales that all it will take for Democrats to lose in the fall is a few posts from me casting a critical eye on the good faith of our freshly minted Never Trump besties. And apparently our Never Trump besties, who've been Republicans their whole life and have been, down in the dirt, calling people like us traitors and liars and monsters and goons and losers and welfare queens, are also apparently so incredibly fragile that a couple of posts by a nobody blogger in a cornfield will flip them right around and drive them right back into the arms of Donald Trump.
Yes.
But my posts for these people, as salty as my language gets sometimes, really just comes down to asking them some very simple, blunt questions about what is the nature of this true conservatism of which you speak? Where have you been for the last 30 years? Right. Why do you keep pretending that Rush Limbaugh never happened and Newt Gingrich doesn't exist and you weren't a part of all this? What is responsible for you, especially since for the last 30 years, you've been lecturing the rest of us on personal fucking responsibility without end? All right.
Well, and I also think their focus on Donald Trump solely as the problem, and this goes back to Trumpism, and not on the political consultant who has made those ugly MS-13 ads since Trump was elected, right? In your Never Trump lifetime, there are Republican consultants making racist ads and counting on the racism of the Republican base for votes and money. If you are a Never Trumper who is aghast at Trump's white nationalism and racism, you need to out your colleagues who are banking on that racism for success. The Willie Horton ad was just the tip of the iceberg. But you ought to be outing the people who made that, Nicole Wallace, because you were, I believe, on that campaign. You believe that George H.W. Bush is God. His campaign made the Willie Horton ad.
No, George H.W. Bush made the Willie Horton.
George H.W. Bush's presidential campaign against Michael Dukakis made the Willie Horton ad. Banked on the racism of white America for votes and success. There needs to be accountability for that in the Republican Party. Not Trump. Trump is just using what was already there. The number of Trump primary voters who said, he's saying what I'm thinking. Build a wall, keep the Mexicans out. White nationalism. He's saying what I'm thinking. That was already there. These voters did not fall off a truck and decide to vote for Trump for the first time in their lives they're going to vote. That is not the case. They were Republican primary voters, registered Republicans. And he got more Republican primary votes than any other candidate in history by parroting what was being said on Fox and Fox Business.
And on hate radio
for the last decades.
And here's the thing. Well, first of all, this August, next month, will be the 30th anniversary of Rush Limbaugh being syndicated nationally.
Oh, my gosh.
30 years. 30 years, these people have been steeping in this filth, in this treason, in this racism, and loving every minute of it. So pretending that somehow Donald Trump is this anomaly at the end of the bell curve is bullshit. And and the thing is, they know it's bullshit. Nobody works on a political campaign. Believe me, just as a lowly door knocker, nobody works on a political campaign. Certainly no one organizes a political campaign without knowing who their voters are, what their voters want to hear, and how to tell it to them in a way that will get them to the polls.
And if you don't know any of that, you should be fired. Paid political consultants who make a humongous amount of money in the age of Citizens United, that's where the money's going, are worth their weight in gold because they know that sort of thing, right?
Sure they do. And it was not an accident, Steve Schmidt, that when your very bestest friend, John McCain, wanted to win in 2008, finally decided, screw it, I'm going for it, I'm going to roll the dice. One of his very first stops was going down to Liberty University to kiss Jerry Falwell's racist ass.
Right.
And this is somebody that John McCain, to his credit, rebuked 8 years before and was steamrolled by George W. Bush and Karl Rove using a series of, shall we say, racist push polls, whisper campaigns, and the usual rat fuckery that Republicans deploy to win elections, because the Republican Party knows goddamn well that the bulk of their voters are racist assholes who need to hear some which way, through a push poll, through a whisper campaign, through an ad, through a wink and a nod.
Right, that John McCain has a black baby. Did you know that? Yeah.
Ronald Reagan going down to Philadelphia, Mississippi, and talking about wink, wink, states' rights. They need to hear that we understand we can't talk about this shit in the open, but you know where we stand.
Right.
That's the compact the Republican Party has made with its voters since 50 years.
1964. Since my entire lifetime. Yeah.
And the idea that Steve Schmidt is going to sit up there and pretend that this is all a complete fucking surprise to him.
Yeah.
And Nicole Wallace is utterly shocked. But here's the flip side of that. We've been very clear that you're welcome to join our party. You're welcome to come on over to the light side and keep most of your beliefs intact. But you got to do certain things. You got to confess, you got to atone, and you got to repent.
Right.
You got to admit that this is your problem, that you created this, that you were wrong. You got to say it. Because if you don't say it, we're right back to Tea Party land in 2000 and 2009.
And you've cashed that check already. You have cashed that check.
Yeah. We've given you one chance after another. And that's the part about Matthew Dowd's.
Not we. We haven't given you that chance, but society and the media in particular have given you multiple chances to reinvent your party after failure.
And that's the strong point I have, the strong disagreement I have with Matthew Dowd, who is a fundamentally ridiculous person. Because the response to him, desperately in need of humble servant leaders, is, we had one. We had one, you asshole. For 8 years, we had one. We had exactly the sort of person you described. We had exactly the sort of person David Brooks prays for every week. And the Republican Party hated that man so much, they nominated and elected an openly racist madman precisely because he promised to burn down everything Obama had ever touched.
Right.
The problem is the Republican Party. And if the words, both sides do it, or it's only Trump, come out of your mouth, you're lying. And you goddamn well know you're lying. And I can't trust a liar inside my perimeter, because the minute I turn my back, you'll knife me in the back and steal away all my shit. And you'll go right back to nominating Ted Cruz.
Right.
And you know, Jennifer Rubin has done
She's
the right
done
thing.
the right thing. I was wrong. I didn't know how many racists were in my party, and now I know.
I thought they were the fringe. They weren't.
Yep.
And you know who I have hope for, Blue Gal? I don't really. But David Brooks literally today, David Brooks discovered racism.
I'm
very excited.
2018, he's discovered racism? Yeah. Really?
His column.
Did Dinesh D'Souza help?
Well, Dinesh D'Souza is implied, of course, in every punctuation mark David Brooks uses.
Dinesh D'Souza called another Twitter user this week a little weenie, and irony curled up and died.
Yeah. No, this is the week that David Brooks, his column today, "The Quiet Death of Racial Progress," and I'm like, quiet? Really?
What?
Really? I get it when you're riding down the Acela corridor in the quiet car and you're wearing earmuffs made of Charles Murray books, that it may seem very quiet, but outside of Mr. Brooks's little terrarium, it's been loud as fucking hell for decades.
I love you, Driftglass.
I love you too. And you know who told David Brooks that this was happening?
Everybody.
A guy named Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, fun fact, America, Ta-Nehisi Coates' book is that which is being read by Luke Cage in the first episode of Luke Cage.
He's sitting in a barber chair reading Ta-Nehisi Coates' book. Yes, he is.
And believe me, Mr. Coates did not dedicate his book to David Brooks, but he published it. And David Brooks, 3 years ago, not 30 years ago, 3 years ago, almost exactly to the day, wrote a column called Listening to Ta-Nehisi Coates While White.
Uh-huh.
And it was the most condescending, patronizing, privileged, white mayonnaise bullshit you've ever read in your life. Because he's like, I guess as a white person, am I allowed to have a difference of opinion? Can I differ with you? I mean, I respect your opinion, but and this is the sentence that I lived and died by. I laughed and laughed so hard I could barely write. He accuses Ta-Nehisi Coates of refusing to acknowledge that the American dream, while sullied, is not a flim-flam. It's real. And he tells Mr. Coates, by dissolving the dream under the acid of excessive realism, you trap generations in the past and destroy the guiding star that points to a better future. It's very sad.
And then he dabs the corners of his eyes with his lace handkerchief. Is that it? Yeah.
He did. And I got to say, the dissolving the dreams under the acid of excessive realism may only be equaled in patronizing smarm to when Mr. Brooks was an Iraqi war pimp and talked about the jewels of nuance. How all those liberal libtards out there didn't understand that George Bush is a genius, and they don the jewels of nuance. They dance in the gray. They don't understand that we're right and you're wrong, so shut up and sit down. Again, David Brooks, it doesn't exist in their world until it kicks the door down and grabs them by the throat. And then suddenly racism's a problem. And our job, therefore, is to kick the door down.
Yeah. Well, and Driftglass, in addition to Donald Trump giving the Sun Rupert Murdoch interview yesterday and this morning saying, I didn't say any of that stuff that's on that tape.
Right.
He had a whole bunch of white nationalism in that interview. But you shouldn't, you Europeans should have never let the immigrants in. There are now places I don't recognize. And you changed the culture of your country by doing this and how terrible it is. You just never should have let brown people into your countries.
Wake up, white people.
I mean, it's white nationalist. It's absolute, flat out white nationalist. Why weren't you more Hitler? That is really his thing. Right. He says in this, that is his analysis of the European situation.
I'm not saying that he wanted to mark the D-Day invasion anniversary by saying this was the day that thousands of patriotic Germans defended their country against the encroachment of polyracial monsters from America. But in his heart of hearts, I think Donald Trump really believes the wrong side won that war.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Deep down inside. He appreciates power and dominance of white men. Yeah.
And flattery and money.
Yeah. And flattery and money. Driftglass, I would like to applaud one person who I feel this week did show evidence of, for now or for today, being a principled Republican. And that's Rod Rosenstein.
Yes.
I have very, very, very mixed feelings about Rod Rosenstein.
Yes.
But today, when he put forward the indictments of Russian nationals involved in the Russian security apparatus.
The attack on our election.
Right. And their attack on our elections, but all connected back to Putin's spy network. I mean, this is all now connected to the Kremlin. And it's a very bad day for Roger Stone. And it's a very bad day for a lot of people.
For WikiLeaks. We love WikiLeaks.
For WikiLeaks, yeah. Yeah. And it turns out, the hacking started the day Donald Trump said, Russia, if you're listening, find Hillary's emails. And Guccifer wasn't just some random guy hacker out there for himself looking for stuff.
Might be a guy in his bedroom. Who knows?
We don't know. 400-pound guy. We don't know. No, it was Putin's Secret Service spy network working for him to do this. Okay. But Rod Rosenstein also made some points about domestic interference with the investigation, with leaks, with pretending that you know stuff that you can't possibly know in the investigation, and with a very pointed eye towards the House Republicans, basically said, you guys aren't conducting this investigation, and knock it off. Now, they won't knock it off, but
no, of course not.
He was a principal. I felt like today I was listening to a principled person who was defending his agency and the work of Robert Mueller, and I was proud of that.
Well, you know what, Blue Gal? It sounds like you've donned the jewels of nuance.
I don the jewels every day, Driftglass. Let me tell you.
And you look damn sexy in them, baby.
And I'm sorry that your heart is breaking, though, Driftglass. Yes. Can we just sum up with that, why your heart is breaking in this election campaign?
I do want to mention that Donald Trump, while the rest of this was going on, the Senate confirmed a guy named Brian Benchikowski, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, to be the guy next in line to replace Rosenstein, the Department of Justice, a man with direct, heavy ties to Vladimir Putin and virtually no courtroom experience. So that's exciting. He did the same thing with NASA, apparently. He appointed as the number 2 guy at NASA, the guy who's currently the Senate's deputy sergeant at arms.
He's an idiot.
I don't know why, other than, firing a bullet has ballistic, characteristics, and so does space travel.
Every single appointment that this monster makes is illegitimate.
Apparently Brent Kavanaugh, who we didn't talk about because it's been a big old taco full of bullshit this week, recently described Roe versus Wade as part of a, quote, tie to freewheeling judicial creation of unenumerated rights. What does that mean? That means your right of privacy is going away.
Well, and that's going to be really interesting for senior citizens who might want to make private decisions with their doctors about their right to die, their right to hospice care, their right to et cetera, if he's going to run everything by 1960s Catholicism before he decides, which appears to be what, he's doing. Right to privacy and a private decision with your doctor has ramifications that a whole lot of MAGA people, it's like tariffs. A lot of MAGA people aren't paying attention to that.
Yeah.
And
tariffs sound like fun until your Trump-loving soybean farmer down the road suddenly has no place for his products.
Right.
And then, you know what he wants when he finds out there's no place to sell his stupid soybeans?
He wants to blame Obama.
He wants to know what the evil government's going to do.
Right. Oh, no. Oh, immediately. Yep. And when your healthcare costs go up, it's going to be the same thing. Yep.
And just as a final little note, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're not talking about because there literally is just too much. Bill Shine's wife, the new guy who's going to control.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Is going to fit right in.
She's going to fit right in. And I am so proud of Youngest Child this week. I had that quote from Mrs. Shine up on my screen, and I was looking up whether anyone at Crooks and Liars had written about it yet, and turned out they had. But I had the quote up on my screen, and it was, of course women in the military should expect harassment. They have 4,000 horny sailors on their ship, and what do you expect if you're going to go into that work environment? You're going to have that, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Youngest Child walked into my office and saw that, and read it, and she said, "Who is that?" And I explained to her who it was, and that it was somebody's wife, and it wasn't an actual official, but it's offensive to a lot of people. And, I tried to give her the 50-cent tour without you calling her the C word in front of my daughter, trying not to teach her to do that. And Youngest Child immediately said, "That's like blaming a woman who's raped for being raped." And I looked at her and said, "Someone raised you right."
Yep.
She got it right away. She just immediately oh no. So I'm proud of that. Very, very proud of that. And now talk about your heartbreak, Driftglass.
Yeah, let's dial it back to Illinois. J.B. Pritzker, who we're certainly going to vote for governor.
Who's going to be the next governor? That's not even a question. Yeah.
Is running a series of commercials about workforce development and manufacturing in Illinois.
Which is your bailiwick.
That's what I used to do for a living.
Yeah.
Until the Great Recession cost me my job for political reasons. that was my thing. I was one of the creators of that vocabulary of talking about economics in terms of targeted sectoral training, specifically in manufacturing, specifically a skills gap that was coming down the road in 10 or 15 years in the future or sooner.
And it's here.
That could be, that's here. And my little team built up enough political capital to open a high school, to open a specific freestanding workforce center that specialized in this. We got funding for it, a significant amount of funding for it. Then the Great Recession came along. And so we did a lot of really groundbreaking work. This is an area I know very, very well. And I know exactly what the multiplier effect is from manufacturing jobs and the economic benefits that happen. And every time you create a manufacturing job, you create 2 or 3 more in the economy. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. I could talk about this shit for hours. And I used to talk about this shit for hours.
You used to train people on how it worked. Yeah.
I used to have access to budgets in the tens of millions of dollars to do this sort of thing. We figured out how to use TIF money to fund this sort of thing, which was absolutely revolutionary and wasn't being done anywhere else in the country. Then comes the recession. Then for purely political reasons, I found out I didn't have a job anymore. I was doing a great job. I got a pat on the back and shown the door. And every one of my projects crashed and burned.
Yeah.
I handed them off to people who didn't know what they were doing. I begged them to please treat them with respect and treat them as a way to get us through the recession and on the other side of it, that people depended on these things for jobs that I was suddenly going to be without.
And that reasonable person, Barack Obama, who wanted to do all of this sort of thing, was told by the Republican Congress, we have to do austerity now.
Got to cut.
So, and now J.B. Pritzker is doing ads, and so are some state senators also doing political ads about workforce development and bringing jobs to downstate and training, and it's all just things that Driftglass has been saying since 2008 in our house about what can really help the economy.
Well, things I've been working on, I used to work on since 2000. That stings. I appreciate the fact that he's doing it. I appreciate the fact that it's the vocabulary and message and funding and all that stuff. He got all that shit right, but it really does just hit me right where it's sore. Yeah. That I am out of work. I'm going to be out of work for the rest of my life. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm never going to see another full-time job. Certainly not one with benefits.
Yeah.
And watching things that I helped build, that I was really instrumental in creating and launching, sailing off into the world and doing good work and having no way to attach myself to it, to help out with it, to get myself employed, moving that along because things happened.
Yeah.
And that breaks my heart a little bit.
Yep. Send $5, $5.50 for my birthday. And each week we post to our Facebook page and website an internet kitty sent by you, the listeners. This week's internet kitty is Coco, who likes to bite your book while you are reading it. He likes book biting. You can see him on our Facebook page and website. Coco is biting a book. Send your internet kitty to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, or you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. Tossing confetti in the air. If you want to write us, write us. If you don't want to write us, don't write us, but send $5. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email, your letter, or the memo line on your check on the air, unless you say otherwise. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage, iced or hot, for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job, Driftglass. This is our job. Approximately 1% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution, and you can too. And it's my birthday on Monday. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details. Our PayPal, our postal address, our GoFundMe, and our Patreon are all there at proleftpod.com. Please share our show on Facebook or Twitter, and thank you so much for doing that. Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are both looking forward to seeing Devin Nunes under oath on TV and sweating like the pig that knows it's on the menu. And they'd also like to wish Mama a really, really happy birthday.
Thank you, Driftglass. I love you.
Love you, baby.
Let's think about living. Let's think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the bopping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2018, DGBG Productions Incorporated.